You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, we have some new reporting involving Matt Gaetz and a scandal that we've been keeping an eye on for a long time here, a scandal that Kevin McCarthy has alluded to, even other Republicans have alluded to. I'm going to read this reporting from Notice. Representative Matt Gaetz attended a drug-fueled sex party in 2017 with a 17-year-old girl at the center of the alleged sex trafficking scandal, according to legal documents filed to a Florida federal court shortly before midnight Thursday, which cite sealed affidavits from 3 eyewitness testimonies. So what do we know about this Gaetz situation regarding this new reporting right here?
Yeah, interesting, Brian, because we have long known that the Department of Justice investigated Matt Gaetz for possible sex trafficking of an underage girl. But of course, that case never did come to fruition with a prosecution, even though there was a very high-value cooperating witness who reportedly was incriminating Matt Gaetz, a guy named Joel Greenberg, one of Matt Gaetz' running buddies. The case just kind of fizzled. It went away, and we can talk in a few minutes about why that might be. But now what we have is there are court documents down in Florida that are being reported by Notice and the Daily Beast that reporters have gotten a hold of or are privy to. And what they show is that in 2017, Matt Gaetz attended what is described as a, quote, sex-fueled drug party. And at that party, pretty horrifically, there was a 17-year-old girl who was a high school junior who was reportedly naked and at least inferentially was involved in these sex acts and ingesting illegal drugs. Cocaine was mentioned, ecstasy, marijuana, and the reporting is Matt Gaetz was at that party. Now, I want to be clear. The reporting that we've seen thus far doesn't say anything more than that, but even that is pretty damning when you have, a member of Congress attending what is being reported in court documents as a sex-fueled drug party involving, underage girls. So that is the state of the new information. I have a feeling we're going to be hearing more about this in the coming days. But of course, there's also an ethics investigation in Congress that is up and running into these matters. And, this could very well forward that ball and result in Matt Gaetz, who knows, being sanctioned or perhaps even more.
And does this change anything from what we knew previously regarding Matt Gaetz, this new reporting?
It's interesting because we learned bits and pieces of the investigation into Matt Gaetz a couple of years ago when DOJ was actively investigating. I believe there was evidence that Matt Gaetz had his phone seized. What does that mean?
Right.
It means a federal judge reviewed the evidence that was in a sworn affidavit presented to the judge by presumably FBI agents, and the judge concluded, yes, there's probable cause to believe there's evidence of crime located in Matt Gaetz' phone. And so, that's an indication that it's an investigation that is deadly serious, that has progressed to the point where the FBI is obtaining search warrants for possible evidence. And yet, ultimately, over time, what we learned is that Matt Gaetz wasn't indicted, and I don't think there's any expectation that he will be indicted. We can certainly talk about why that is, but, this is some of the first, concrete information we're hearing from court documents. Let me hasten to add, Brian, the reporting is these court documents were filed in federal court in Florida, and they involve a battle over lawyers' fees, whether lawyers' fees should be awarded in a civil suit that has since been dismissed. So I want to add, it's not a criminal prosecution down in Florida, but they are described as sworn court documents and sworn testimony of some of the witnesses who had firsthand knowledge of this drug-fueled sex party that Matt Gaetz attended.
Now, as far as we know, there is still an open ethics investigation. What does it say that Congress still has enough of a predicate to continue investigating this issue, and yet DOJ opted not to indict? Doesn't that seem a little bit backwards?
Yeah, it's always a little bit of an oddity, Brian, when you have, not only two institutions of government, but two separate branches of government, the executive branch, the Department of Justice, and the legislative branch, Congress, doing, investigations of what seem to be the same incidents, potentially the same crimes. But what you have to realize is the standards, the burdens of proof are very different. In a criminal case, if the Department of Justice was to indict Matt Gaetz and take him to trial, they would have to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. That is the highest evidentiary burden known to man. You would put it up at about 95, 96, 97% of the evidence proving guilt, whereas in an ethics scenario, in an ethics investigation in Congress, there's no proof beyond a reasonable doubt. This is largely up to what the members of Congress who are going to vote on whether there has been a violation, an ethical violation proved, and what the sanction should be. So it's always a little disappointing when it feels like crimes have been committed and DOJ did not proceed, particularly against defendants who are, privileged and connected and influential, political, what I often refer to as the ruling class criminals who seem to get a pass, or at least the rule of law seems to go easy on them. And yet there are reasons. When I looked at the criminal investigation, at least the information that was publicly reported, often in cases like this, the victims, who at the time seemed to be a 17-year-old girl, often the victims don't want to cooperate with the prosecutors. And that makes proving the case very difficult. Not impossible, but it can be very difficult. And Joel Greenberg, DOJ's marquee cooperating witness against Matt Gaetz, was an extremely ugly cooperating witness because of all the lies he told, because of the sex trafficking offenses he pleaded guilty to and is serving time for. Not only that, there was some indication that even after Joel Greenberg became a cooperating witness, at which point you think, okay, this guy has got to be telling DOJ all the truth now. He continued to lie. At least that is some of what we saw in the reporting, which makes a cooperating witness like that darn near unusable by federal prosecutors. So there seemed to be a confluence of bad facts and circumstances that may have caused DOJ to say, you know what, even if he violated the law, it looks like we can't quite get there and bring a charge on the evidentiary front.
Glenn, this whole story, this whole scandal has been kind of percolating in the background of politics for a long time. It's effectively an open secret within Congress. Kevin McCarthy, as I mentioned before, has referenced it publicly numerous times. The fact that he's willing to reference it so openly without worrying about any defamation or anything like that would suggest that he's relatively certain about what he's saying. And yet, at the same time, you've got Republicans decrying the weaponization of government against Republicans. Can you talk about the dichotomy here in that Republicans are claiming that Democrats are so content, so eager to wield the levers of government against Republicans, and yet when they actually have the opportunity to do exactly that for something for which there's at least enough of a predicate for even other Republicans to attack Gaetz with, they opt not to?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like the Department of Justice under Merrick Garland is doing a particularly effective job of weaponizing DOJ against Republicans when you have Matt Gaetz, who goes completely unaccountable, at least on the criminal front. And of course, you also have the Department of Justice prosecuting Democrats like Bob Menendez in New Jersey, Henry Cuellar in Texas, Hunter Biden, the son of a Democrat president. It doesn't really feel like DOJ has been weaponized against Republicans. In fact, not a single member of Congress, even those who asked for pardons because they knew they'd committed crimes on and around January 6th and wanted to get away with those crimes, not a single one of them has been prosecuted. So is DOJ really weaponized against Republicans?
And let's finish off with this. Do you expect that we will see any updates based on the reporting that we just read on Matt Gaetz, or does it seem like this is just kind of a procedural issue that made news by virtue of the salaciousness of the story, but doesn't suggest any further developments?
Good question, open question. I frankly don't suspect this will jumpstart the criminal probe, because I have a feeling whatever is contained in those documents that were filed in that civil matter down in Florida, that information was probably already known to federal prosecutors and investigators. So it's probably baked in to the decision not to pursue criminal charges against Matt Gaetz, a decision made by DOJ previously. It could have an impact on the ethics investigation into Matt Gaetz that's being conducted in Congress. And it could also, if there is an ethical violation found, it could ratchet up the sanction that Congress decides to impose on Matt Gaetz.
Okay, well, we will continue to stay on top of the story if there are any other updates against Matt Gaetz. So for those watching right now, if you want to follow along, please make sure to subscribe. That is also the best way to support the work that we do. I'll put the link to both of our channels right here on this screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.